UFC Fight Night Vegas 23 on ABC2, Vettori versus Holland just took place, and I'm going to go through the entire card, starting with the early prelims, ending with the main event, giving my reaction and breakdown to every single fight on the card, and also giving an event recap as well, and what an amazing event this was. Great fight, start to finish. Maybe the main event could have been a little bit more exciting, but we'll get to that in a second. Let's start with the early prelim opener of Impa Kasanganay versus Sasha Palitnikov. Good fight to start off the card, very technical in the first round, both guys doing quite well. Round could go either way. I thought it went to Impa Kasanganay. He got a takedown, established some good control time. One thing I want to mention before we get into the rest of the fights on this card is I did really well this card. I only got one fight wrong, arguably two, but we'll talk about that one in a second. But I only got one fight wrong technically. Good performance by Kasanganay. I picked him to win this fight. I thought he'd win it by decision, but Sasha Palitnikov gave up his back in the second round, and Impa Kasanganay, it wasn't even like he took the back and got a rear naked choke. He just saw the neck of Sasha Palitnikov and thought, you know what, I'm jumping on this rear naked. So good job by Impa Kasanganay to pounce on the opportunity and get himself a big submission win in the second round. He called out Sean Brady. I doubt he's going to get a fight with Sean Brady. I reckon he's probably going to get a fight with someone like Chaos Williams coming off a win, something along these lines. We'll see what happens with Impa Kasanganay, but I think he should take his time. He's still a young guy. He's still a prospect to watch out for. I know he got embarrassed by Buckley. I think he would actually beat Buckley in a rematch looking back at it, but Kasanganay, 9-1 prospect to watch out for. Very good fighter, very technical, gets a submission win in the second round. Moving on up the card to the prelims. Jung versus William Knight. Now, I picked Jung to win this one by decision, and he won this fight by decision. I thought it was going to be a lot closer than it was, okay? And first of all, before we even get into the fight, William Knight needs to go down to middleweight. He's just way too small for these light heavyweights, okay? Like, light heavyweights now, they're 6'3", 6'4", 6'2" at minimum with Jan Blachowicz. Like, you can't be 5'9". You can't be. He's way too small. He was getting bullied in a clinch by Jung, muscled over pretty easily by Jung as well. You can have all the muscle fibers you want. If you can't push a good cardio pace and can't land that big KO punch in the early rounds, it's going to backfire on you when a guy like Jung actually goes out there, looks very technical. He looked a lot more improved than he did in his Sam Alvey fight as well with his grappling game. I like to see it. He had some good sweeps. He went for the same over-under sweep every single time against William Knight, and William Knight could not do anything about it. So well done, Jung. It was a good performance. He just dominated him in a grappling the entire fight long. William Knight had some moments here and there where he would scramble and look like maybe he was going to do something, but Jung just recovered position, got back on top. One thing that annoyed me in this fight massively, though, is the referee. Hey, let's get active. What do you mean? He's only just got him to the ground. Let's stop saying, like, hey, let's get active here. He's only got him to the ground. He's barely established dominant position to control William Knight and not have another scramble. I don't understand what the referee was looking for, but yeah, he stayed a little bit not too active on the ground, but he won the fight. You can't just stand that up because it's not entertaining enough for you as a referee. Good win from Jung, good grappling, ate some bombs in the third round and knew he was just going to take down William Knight after it. So good job from Jung, showed toughness, some development in his grappling game. I'd like to see him versus the winner of Devin Clark versus Ion Kutalaba, which is coming up soon. That'd be a great fight. Jung gets it done. Moving on up the card, Luis Saldana versus Jordan Griffin. Now, I think round one is really close, and I know a lot of people are probably clicking on this video to say, oh, I can't wait for this guy to say that it's going to be a robbery. It wasn't a robbery, in my opinion. I've watched the fight again, which is why this video is a little bit delayed. I watched the fight again. Saldana might have edged that first round, guys. Like, I know that he got wobbled at one point, but I'm telling you this, no punch landed for that to wobble him. I watched the fight again. It didn't look like he actually got wobbled. He just looked like he was a little bit off balance. His leg looks really weird the entire fight long. Maybe he torn an ACL going into the fight because it was very sloppy and his footwork looked a little bit funny. But he landed a lot of leg kicks early in that first round. And the reason why I'm only really talking about the first round is because we know Jordan Griffin kind of won the second round with the rear naked choke at the end. You have to give Jordan Griffin the second round and you have to give Luis Saldana the third round. So it all comes down to the first. I haven't heard the commentary all the way through. Maybe I need to. And we'll get to Allen versus Yusuff in a second because I watched that one back with commentary. Saldana could have won the first round of that fight. He cracked Griffin with a big shot. Griffin had to stop himself from being knocked down with his hands after that shot landed. in the first round with that hook from Luis Saldana. Luis Saldana also chopped at his legs twice and made his leg buckle twice. These are big things for judges. I don't think it was that huge of a robbery. I can see an argument for Saldana, and it's not just because I picked Saldana. I'll say when I'm wrong. But I thought Saldana could have won that first round and snuck it maybe. Like, the judges value damage over control time, and that's what Saldana gave him that round, in my opinion. He didn't even get rocked by a shot off Jordan Griffin. He just looked a little bit off balance. Either way, close decision. Wouldn't have minded if Griffin got his hand raised, to be honest with you, but close fight. Round one, literally, in my opinion, can go either way. And to help Luis Saldana out a little bit more, he outlanded Jordan Griffin that round on significant strike. So it just helps him one more. But, you know, close round, good stuff. Moving on up the card. Hunter Azure versus Jack Shaw. Now, speaking of judges, maybe you guys are on to something about Saldana versus Griffin. Speaking of judges, what's going on in a Jack Shaw versus Hunter Azure fight? How do you have 30-27 Jack Shaw and 29-28 Hunter Azure? Doesn't make any sense. In my opinion, Hunter Azure probably snuck the second round. I can give him the second round. I don't see a 30-27 Jack Shaw. I don't see a 30-26. I want to say there was a 30-26. There was a 10-8 round in there, I think, somewhere. I don't even know how that happened. Round one was dominant for Jack Shaw. He won the round very clearly. Good win in the round one. Took him down a couple of times. Controlled on the ground. Landed some total strikes here and there to keep busy. Landed a good head kick that looked like it stunned him. A couple of good right hands as well that stunned Hunter Azure. Hunter Azure landed some good shots back in the second round. And in the third round, they were both landing some decent shots here and there. Jack Shaw controlled like 3 minutes of the round, 2.5 minutes of the round, and at the end, Azure had a good moment where he ended up on top, went for a rear naked choke, but Jack Shaw ended the fight out of the choke and on top. Fair play. If Azure ends that third round, rear naked choking the life out of Jack Shaw, and Jack Shaw saved by the bell, I would maybe give him that round. But Jack Shaw was not in danger, reversed out of it, stayed on top. I wouldn't have maybe even given him the round if he did that, but you know, it depends on the rear naked choke and how in it was. But I thought Jack Shaw won that fight rounds 1 and 3 pretty clearly. I said he would win by jiu-jitsu, not by jiu-jitsu. I said he would win by rear naked choke using his jiu-jitsu. But it didn't happen. Hunter Azure, really good defensive grappler. It was good to see Jack Shaw go out there. I've known he's really good at grappling, but you never know until you take on a good wrestler. And Hunter Azure, even though it is Montana, was the Montana state champion in wrestling in his weight class, in this weight class. So Jack Shaw going out there and out grappling him is a really big sign. I know it's Montana, but at least there's credentials there. The best wrestler in the state of Montana at this weight class, Jack Shaw was able to out grapple him. So it's good to get some validification on my Welsh brethren. Jack Shaw doing my ethnicity proud. Only a bit Welsh, but I'm fucking proud of it. You know what I'm saying? Now we've got Jack Shaw coming up the ranks. 14-0. Very good performance. Looking forward to seeing what happens to him next. But really great fight. Technical battle between two guys. Shaw won the fight in my opinion, but very close. Very close. Hunter Azure stayed in there. Still a potential guy in Hunter Azure to watch out for, but Jack Shaw took the spotlight at bantamweight, and now we've got O'Malley, now we've got Yanez, now we've got Jack Shaw. There are so many bantamweights to watch out for, but here's an undefeated up-and-comer in Jack Shaw who's only 26 years of age and has a long time before he's 27. Very good sign for Wales in terms of a potential top contender or champion one day. Big win by Jack Shaw. Moving on up the card, Yorgan de Castro versus Jarjis Danho. Now, I picked Yorgan de Castro to win. He got KO'd in the first round. I picked him to KO Jarjis Danho in the first round. It almost happened. He landed a good right hand. Jarjis Danho kept the clinch. Good stuff. Yorgan de Castro seemed like he knew he'd rocked Jarjis a little bit. There was I don't know if you guys even noticed this. There was a moment where they really collided in the clinch against the cage, and Yorgan landed a close right hand, and Jarjis kind of slumped a little bit against the cage. I definitely think he got stung behind the ear or something like that by Yorgan de Castro. They break. Yorgan goes a little bit too aggressive, looking for the big KO. Jarjis lands one straight on his chin and puts him out cold in the first round. Jarjis Danho, what a phenomenal performance by him. Great KO in the first round over a dangerous guy in Yorgan de Castro. That fat fuck Yorgan lets me down again. The whole card I was good. Yorgan lets me down. Really, really not happy with you, Yorgan. You ruined my entire massive parlay of 7 fights that I had, and I got every other one correct. You fat cunt. It's okay though. Jarjis Danho, 37 years of age. Let's rush. Him versus Dontel Mays, 2 months. Let's get back in there. We don't have time to waste with Jarjis Danho, 37 years of age. Let's get him back in there. Moving on up the card, John Makdessi versus Ignacio Bahamondes. Good fight, really good fight. Fight of the night, 100%. I don't know how, and I've checked the UFC Instagram, I have no idea how they gave fight of the night to Marquez versus Alvey. Then I thought about it. Bahamondes missed weight. So they're going to give it to Alvey versus Marquez on fight of the night, even though, despite taking on an opponent who was literally looking like 2 weight classes above him, and the guy missed weight as well, even though all of that, he still did not get a performance bonus or a bonus in general. John Makdessi got robbed of 50 grand. He put his real life on the line out there, took a bunch of big shots, gave him back. He was just a little bit too technical for Ignacio Bahamondes, always went back to the legs, went to the body a lot with the jab and the 2, and then came back upstairs. Ignacio was headhunting a little bit at certain moments, and John Makdessi was mixing it up, and I think that's what inevitably won him the fight. I picked John Makdessi to win by decision, and he went out there and got it done by decision. I'm very proud of him for doing that, because it was a tall order. He was a huge underdog, and I would have made good money on him if it wasn't for Yorgan fucking de Castro losing as the biggest fucking favourite on the card, but that's okay. John Makdessi, good decision win over Ignacio Bahamondes. Bahamondes looked good. There's no need to cut down to lightweight. Welterweight's a less stacked division. I say move him up to welterweight. He's 6'3". Why is he at lightweight? You know what happened to James Vick, and he got rocked really badly in that first round, but he showed good toughness. Move him up to welterweight. I think he does very well there. And then we'll see what happens with him at welterweight, I guess. Maybe him versus Mike Perry at welterweight. We'll talk about Perry in a second. But John Makdessi gets it done by decision. Great performance, and I'm right again. Moving on up the card. Scott Holtzman versus Mateusz Gamrot. I said that Mateusz Gamrot was going to win by late rounds finish. I settled on round 3 by TKO to ground and pound. He went out there and got it done a lot earlier. Mateusz Gamrot, legendary Polish power. It lives on in Mateusz Gamrot. And he had a dominant performance against Scott Holtzman. Risky here and there. Certain moments where Holtzman's swinging big bombs. And Holtzman is very dangerous. Very muscled up guy. Lands big shots here and there. But Mateusz Gamrot, he just looked really good. Really, really good. And I'm saying this right now. Dude's championship material. Really is. I don't know what I prefer more. His win over Scott Holtzman or Beneil Dariush's. But that just tells you what level he's at. Dariush might be Ferguson next and be top 5. So, like, Gamrot is up there and up there with the best of them, in my opinion. Landed such a nice 1-2 to finish off the fight. Great finish by Mateusz Gamrot. I don't know who they're going to give bonuses to. Maybe I can sum that up in the end. But still, Mateusz Gamrot, great performance. He wasn't even getting single legs. He was just saying, give me that fucking foot, bitch. I love that attitude from Mateusz Gamrot. He was just grabbing the foot of Holtzman and dragging him. Give me that shit. You ain't going nowhere. It reminded me of Covington versus Masvidal wrestling in their apartment. Covington just molesting Masvidal all over the place in his own apartment. There was even the same takedown where Gamrot sort of switched and then drove through to get a takedown, just like Colby Covington drove Masvidal into the wall of his own apartment, ragdolling him. I liked it. Mateusz Gamrot, great performance. Really good performance. And great stand-up, great takedowns. I thought he won his last fight against Guram Kutateledze. So, I mean, it was a very close fight, which shows how good Guram Kutateledze is still. So he's obviously going to go on to do quite well. And maybe we can use this performance by Mateusz to judge what Guram's going to do moving forward in his career. Because that was a very close fight. I just thought Mateusz maybe edged it a little bit. But still, great performance by Mateusz Gamrot. Really clean. Got a good win. What more can you ask for him? I think he needs one more before we start thinking about jumping him into those rankings. But I say him versus Thiago Moises, Rafael Fiziev, any of these big names outside the rankings will do. Gamrot looked amazing. Really good technical striker. Moving on up the card. Jim Miller versus Joe Solecki. Again, a little bit of a pooper in between a bunch of great performances. But Solecki gets it done, man. Jim Miller's no punk. Jim Miller's got really good grappling still in this part of his career. It'd be okay, like, fair play, you could maybe say it's down to age if Jim Miller goes out there and gets chinned a couple of times in a row, and maybe he's just not taking shots the same way. But to go out there and out-grapple Jim Miller, it's not an easy task. So in my opinion, he should go out there and fight the next person, or the last person who out-grappled Jim Miller, who is Vince Pichel. I don't think he did a good enough performance to jump himself into those ranking discussions, or just outside the ranking discussions. So I'd like to see Joe Solecki versus Vince Pichel, who I just said. So Joe Solecki goes out there. Close first round. He actually got wobbled. Maybe not a lot of people noticed this because the camera angles were all over the place today, but close first round. I thought I gave the first round to him barely, but I could see an argument that Jim Miller won the round. Don't mind that whatsoever. But Miller tagged him in that first round, and Solecki immediately shot for a takedown, which is never a good sign, and his legs started to go a little bit funny as well. In the second and third, though, Joe Solecki just did what Joe Solecki does. Looked good on the feet, looked good on the ground, did very well. He's a little bit risky with his stand-up. His chin is there to be clipped by a bigger... Like, if Fiziev's taking on Joe Solecki, you know what I'm saying? Don't be pulling out of exchanges like that. You're going to get chinned. But Joe Solecki looked good. His grappling still looked good. I'd like to see him take one more fight to really build him up a little bit more. Don't think he's quite ready for the big dogs yet. But good performance against Jim Miller. He won it very impressively. That's more we can ask of him. And I picked him to win as well. And Gamrot. And I picked Makdessi as well. Moving on to the main card. I picked Daniel Rodriguez by submission in the second round. He went out there and maybe did something even better. Mike Perry is very tough. He showed he can take a shot in this fight. But D-Rod... You didn't need to do that to Mike. That's Mike Perry. I mean, not too long ago, it was Black History Month. You don't do that kind of stuff to the Nigerian nightmare Mike Perry. And Nigeria took many L's tonight. We'll get to the co-main event. But Daniel Rodriguez, combinations, man. Dude has really nice hands. He could be 5-0 in the UFC. He should be 5-0 in the UFC. He didn't lose to Nicholas Dalby. And I'll give you one more. He didn't lose another split decision in his career to Victor Reina. So he should be undefeated 16-0 in the rankings in the welterweight division. But he's been robbed of that by bad judging. Clearly beat Mike Perry tonight. Battered him around every single round. Landed good leg kicks the entire time. Tapping with the inside leg kick. Landed good body kicks as well. But Mike Perry landed some good body kicks back. Good kicks back of his own. But it's just he wasn't able to get the takedowns the way he wanted to against Daniel Rodriguez. He was able to in the first round. But D-Rod had already outlanded him enough not to give Mike Perry that first round. And then D-Rod eventually secured the second and third by just piecing up Mike Perry against the cage. It would have been more dignifying if Perry got subbed and caught in a guillotine like he was in the first round. He was in an arm guillotine in the first round. He got out of it. I wish he would have got tapped because he really got battered around for 3 rounds. Stayed in there enough to make it entertaining and to make it interesting and to land some good shots here and there of his own. Just started working the body a little bit too late into the fight. You don't invest in the body in the third round of a fight. You start doing that in the first. He couldn't quite get it done. Daniel Rodriguez just pieced him up for 3 rounds straight. Really good hands. And D-Rod, in my opinion, has earned a ranked opponent, but he's not going to get one. So I guess give him Vicente... No. Give him Nico Price. Nico Price versus Daniel Rodriguez. Sign me up. Quick turnaround. Whatever they want to do. Great performance by Daniel Rodriguez. Or take on Mikel Pereira, Miguel Beza. Any of those matchups make sense. Carlos Condit, if Condit wants a contender. Who knows what Condit wants. But we'll see what happens. Daniel Rodriguez had a great performance. Great kicks. Great combinations, mainly. The 1-2. Maybe it was because of Mike Perry's fucking zero head movement that he's completely lost since the Luque fight. I just really am sad about fucking Perry's career, man. Perry beat Vicente Luque in Uruguay, in South America, 2-1. He beat Luque. If he got his hand raised, maybe he gets Woodley on the slide and beats him. Like, you don't know the difference in career that he could have had, but now he's just not skilled enough to get it done. He just doesn't seem like he's sweet. Or Daniel Rodriguez is amazing. That is something that I will say. D-Rod is actually amazing. I don't want people to see this as, Mike Perry's actually trash. Mike Perry showed up well. He landed some good shots here and there. He made it somewhat competitive. But D-Rod's just another level and should be, in my opinion, 16-0 in his career and potentially ranked in the top 15. D-Rod's a savage. Moving on up the card. Great performance by D-Rod. Nina Ansaroff versus Mackenzie Dern. Speaking of great performances, I picked Mackenzie Dern to win. I thought she would win a 3-round snooze fest against Nina Ansaroff, or Nina Nunes. Got to get used to saying that, I guess. Big Mac Dern looked really good in those shorts especially, but looked really good in the fight as well. Went out there, got the takedown where she needed it, landed good shots here and there on the feet, had some really wild exchanges on the feet where she landed some good shots. Got Nina Ansaroff to the ground where she established control, had some good moments here and there, used top position well, landed some total strikes. Eventually, she was able to get enough of herself above Nina Ansaroff to go for that armbar, and she went for the armbar, and it was just a matter of time before she pried out that arm, and it was very close towards the end of the round. 12 seconds left for Nina Ansaroff, or Nina Nunes, sorry, to make it to the second round of that fight, but Mackenzie Dern did not give up on that armbar. She wanted the armbar finish. She has the most submission finishes in strawweight history. history. Good for her. If she wins another one by submission, she'll have the most in female MMA history. 5 is the most of all time. Crazy, but women's MMA. Mackenzie Dern looked good, though. The ass, especially. But really good Mackenzie Dern performance. Actually looked like a future potential champ. Like a real legit... Before this fight, I thought, Jung's going to dominate strawweight easily. But Mackenzie Dern beating Nina Ansaroff like that, you can't tell me that Suarez is going to be able to do all that much to Mackenzie Dern on the ground. What about Carla Esparza? Is she going to ragdoll Mackenzie Dern? I don't see that happening. So I think Mackenzie Dern, with this performance, announced herself as a legit threat to the title. And I think with one more good win against a girl like Tatiana Suarez, or even a matchup with Joanna and Jacek, she could be on her way to getting that title shot. So good win by Mackenzie Dern. Great performance. And one thing she mentioned as well before this fight, she started hard sparring. Look at the difference that there is. I think there's a lot of female MMA fighters that aren't hard sparring. It's very obvious by the way they throw punches. Start hard sparring, take a little bit of brain damage to get yourself to the top of the division. And that's what Mackenzie Dern showed here. She started hard sparring 3 fights ago. I know it sounds crazy to any boxing fans or any MMA fans out there, but this is women's MMA. She is a professional MMA fighter who has been ranked in the top 15 of her promotion. And she's only just started hard sparring a year ago. I know it sounds crazy, but the difference is a night a day. And her stand-up looks really good, and she looked really good against Nina Ansaroff. Moving on up the card, Sam Alvey versus Julian Marquez. Great fight. I understand why they wanted to give Alvey a little bit of a bonus. He stayed in there, he stayed composed, landed good shots back against Julian Marquez, but Marquez just looked really good. He got tagged a couple of times, rocked here and there, but came back to rock Alvey so many more times than Alvey rocked him. But Alvey did catch him a couple of times and put him in a little bit of trouble. But I thought this was going to be a first round KO. I picked a first round KO, but credit to Julian Marquez. He waited for his moment. He did not rush and swarm his work. He picked his shots. Straight right hands down the pipe, working all day for him. Landed big shots throughout the entire fight. Then in the second round, eventually went for the submission. And again, it was sort of like the Impa Kasanganay versus Sasha Palitnikov one. No real positional advantage, just pouncing on a guy's neck who's trying to get back to his feet. And he sunk in the rear naked choke against Sam Alvey. But he didn't even have the back take. He didn't have the body lock. He just straight up saw the neck and pounced on it. So big win from Julian Marquez. 2 submissions in a row at middleweight. And he looked like an actual guy who could go on to do quite well in the middleweight division, because let's not forget, Sam Alvey went to a split decision with Ryan Spann. Sam Alvey went to a draw with Jung that arguably maybe he could have won if that wasn't a 10-8 in the third round. Julian Marquez looked like a real middleweight contender. Very good performance. Called out a bunch of NFL players for a badminton match or a pickle tennis match. He has niche call-outs, but they work. So fair play Julian Marquez. He's not calling out fighters. He's calling out random other people. But they always react, so he's going to get a lot of notoriety from this. Big win from Julian Marquez. The Cuban Missile Crisis strikes again. Moving on, Arnold Allen versus Sodiq Yusuff in the co-main event. I went with Arnold Allen. I said Arnold Allen would win a 29-28 unanimous decision, and Arnold Allen went out there as an underdog and won himself a 29-28 unanimous decision. Now, I watched the fight back all the way through. Very close second round. I can actually understand an argument. I can understand a bit of an argument as to where someone would say, well, Yusuff won the majority of the fight, but Allen had the moments. I get that. Allen won the first and second round pretty clearly, in my opinion. Great fight back and forth. Watched the part of the first round that I missed a little bit of. But Allen looked really good, man. Big right hand in the first round. And you've got to admit, in that first round, for a guy who's been out for as long as Allen has, he looked switched on early, man. Yusuff was coming forward, looking for big shots, and Allen was picking his shots, moving backwards. Landed a bunch of big hooks in that first round, eventually, before dropping Sodiq Yusuff in that first round as well. But the finishing ability wasn't quite there. Sort of rushed the finish a little bit. A bit more patience, picking his shots, landing that one big follow-up shot that puts a guy out cold is always better than swarming and looking for big follow-up ground and pound shots, and a bunch of them. Always pick the one guaranteed shot over the little flurry shots that people go for. He almost had the back of Sodiq Yusuff in the second round, landed that head kick in the second round that definitely stole him that round that maybe could have been going to Sodiq Yusuff otherwise. Very close fight, but Arnold Allen grinds against the cage in the third. Yusuff, I thought, won the third round because he landed more strikes in the clinch, but maybe Yusuff thought he'd secured the second as well, but Yusuff knew he'd lost. So I just feel like Yusuff wasn't really much he could do. I know a lot of people I saw on the comments were saying, why did Yusuff stay against the cage? He's also in the third round of an MMA fight. He's completely done. He's been rocked twice. He's been hit to the body a lot as well. I think he was also kind of feeling the pressure in the third round. He was getting a little bit tired. So was Arnold Allen. Both guys were, but Sodiq barely outworked him in the third round. But Allen did well in the first and second to secure himself the win, and what a great performance by Arnold Allen it was. One thing I want to say, and this is not something that I say lightly, there seems to be a little bit of a, let's just say, you know, I don't know what to say. Let's just say, I don't know how to describe this, but I'm going to just say it how it is. The commentary seems to be incredibly skewed towards fighters with a tad more melanin in their skin than fighters without. I've noticed this a lot with Daniel Cormier. After the Jan Blachowicz versus Israel Adesanya fight, I noticed it as well. They were more impressed by Yusuff taking the head kick of Allen than Allen landing the head kick. Then Yusuff taking the punch of Arnold Allen than Allen landing the punch. I'm noticing a bit of an anti-white bias in the UFC commentary team, and I think it kind of needs to be a tiny bit addressed. There just seems to be a recurring theme as to whenever there's sort of biased commentary, it seems to be towards the black fighter. Okay, I'm just going to point it out. That's all I'm going to point out. Just investigate some things here and there. Plus, the visible damage rule is anti-white racism. Visible swelling being scored when you're a white guy is ridiculous, but whatever. Anyway, moving on. Marvin Vettori versus Kevin Holland in the main event. Vettori did well. Vettori had a bit of a tough fight, though. Wasn't as easy as he assumed it was going to be. I assume he thought he was going to get the submission when he did with the arm triangle. But to be fair, I thought he was going to get the submission in the second round with the arm triangle as well. But great fight. It wasn't a great fight. It was a bit of a snooze fest in the main event. I've already done a full fight reaction to this, so I'm going to keep it brief. Vettori looked good in the first round. So did Holland. Holland, I thought, snuck the first round on significant strikes. Looked very good in the first round. I know the eventual judges' scorecards gave every round to Marvin Vettori. I thought Holland could have snuck the first, especially with the new rules around control time over damage. Holland could have snuck the first round off Marvin Vettori, and Holland stayed dangerous on the feet throughout the entire fight, but Vettori was just getting the takedowns. 20 minutes of control time in a 25-minute fight. Great performance by Marvin Vettori. Landed some really good shots of his own on the feet. Really good shots of his own. Some clean left-handers down the pipe that pushed Holland backwards with the shots. Vettori looked good. Pushed a hard pace. Put the grappling dominance on Kevin Holland. It's really hard to break a takedown record against someone, especially in a division as high as middleweight. He broke the middleweight takedown record. Great performance by Marvin Vettori. Pushed hard for 5 rounds. Just wasn't the action-packed and entertaining performance or finish that we needed for him to sort of justify calling out Israel Adesanya afterwards. If Vettori was honest and didn't call out Israel Adesanya, I'm sure people wouldn't mind the performance as much. It's because he's always been talking about fighting Adesanya next that we expected a little bit more action from Marvin Vettori. But you know what? If this was a fight where both guys at the weigh-ins just sort of were friendly, shook hands and walked off afterwards, it wouldn't have been a bad performance from Vettori. Wasn't the most action-packed, don't get me wrong, but he won the fight every single round, so what more can you ask for? Vettori gets it done. Don't give him a title shot. If Whittaker beats Gastelum, Whittaker gets a title shot, regardless of anything else. Vettori versus the winner of Cannonier versus Costa in May. Moving on to nothing, because the fight's over. I went, how many fights were on the card? 5 on there. How many fights on the prelims? 7 on the prelims, 8 on the prelims overall of the early prelims. So I went, 12-1? Not too shabby. Like and subscribe. Click that button up there. Goodbye.